awesome.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. This week's guest is, I guess, another kind of return guest. I don't know how to label these guys that are coming back so graciously to do the interview again ever since I don't know, I guess, I won't take total blame. Call Note is to blame here. But Jeff Stormer, welcome back to Everything is Awesome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. You were I think the first person to get back to me and say yes. And I know for you it was about an hour of your time that we kind of wasted. So I appreciate it.
It's completely fine.
You are a storyteller extraordinaire.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah,
I like that title.
that title and creator of worlds is what I label guys like you that are just really good at crafting stories and worlds, and you have to do it in such a unique way on Party of One Pod. Why don't you? We're gonna jump around much differently than we did last time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you kind of tell people what you do with Party of One?
Sure. I am the host and creator of a podcast called Party of One. It is an actual play RPG podcast, which means I play games but not necessarily like Dungeons and Dragons. I have to add that in because a guest was like, "I want to play Dungeons and Dragons," so I'm like, "All right." I used to say not. I used to say not like, but not necessarily. Now I have to say like, but not necessarily, but not necessarily. So I play tabletop RPGs with guests, except I do them one-on-one with a party of one, hence the name.
Yes.
We play a mixture of games on the show, some that are designed for two players, like Kevin Crawford's Scarlet Heroes, or Tim Kopang's Mars Colony, or Caitlin Bell's Our Radios Are Dying, and then we play some games that are not designed for two players, but can work with them through some magic of rules hacking.
I need to stop you. That last one you just mentioned, our radios are dying. What is that? What it's called?
Yeah.
Dear God, that was an amazing game and podcast.
I love that game. It's amazing.
That was, I think the one before that I really liked was the migraine game.
14 Days with Hannah Schaefer. Yeah, it's a good.
Yes, that was the one that was wow, tabletop but serious and but this one is. This is the episode. If people were to ask me point me to a RPG podcast and an episode that's gonna hook me, that one, that episode that was last week, 2 weeks ago.
Last week's, yeah.
So we'll say by the time this airs,
it'll be a few weeks. Episode 19. It's episode 19. Perfect.
There you go. Episode 19 of Party of One Pod. That's the one that I think, if you're new to Jeff and his world, that's the episode you listen to. It's just so good. Do you want to explain the game a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a game. Our Radios Are Dying is designed by game designer Caitlin Bell, who releases all of her stuff for free on her website. It is a game about two lesbian astronauts from the warring planets of Venus and Mars. They are on both planets. Fraternizing with the enemy is punishable by jail time, and being queer is punishable by death. These two lovers have snuck away for a romantic rendezvous on a space station. There was an accident while they were doing some routine repairs, and now they are both essentially floating off to die. There's no hope for rescue. There's no communication equipment. They can't get to anybody. There's nothing they can do. So all they can do is sort of share their last moments together and kind of say all the things that they've never gotten to say before. It's a really heartbreaking game. It's a really powerful game. I love it. It goes to some heavy places, and I think it's wonderful.
it was when I don't, I guess it was maybe the pre-roll to the show, to the episode where you were explaining it, and I was like, well, this is going to be interesting, and then just listening, like, it was listening to the episode made me smile throughout the whole thing, with just, it was like you guys did it pitch perfect as to, I guess, like a bickering couple, you know, even if you were in your last hour, like, it just made me smile the whole time. And like, it reminded me, and I don't know if you saw the tweet, it reminded me of a CW show, like a CW version of Gravity, where like the drama between the arguments that you guys were having. Oh, it was just so perfect. Like, and this is like why when we played our Doctor Who episode, like I totally got lost in the story, because you are one of the best storytellers I know, man.
That means, thank you. That means a lot. I like telling stories. It's what I do.
Yeah, you can tell in each one of your episodes. And I'll the one that the episode you just released, I guess it's episode 20, the funnel one.
No, the funnel. That's a fun one.
That was so fun to listen to. Like, now I assume that one, I did a little bit of research, because I was like, this is one that intrigues me a lot. So I did a little bit of research. That seems like it's one that's meant for, I guess, upwards of 16 people if you're gonna do it right.
Well, it's the way it works is the game is called Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's by Goodman Games. It's a D&D hack that's designed to emulate really, like, the really gonzo fiction that D&D is based on. So it's supposed to be really, like, wild and crazy sword and sorcery stuff.
Okay.
And part of that is the funnel, which is what I played with Aaron. And the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to have a group of like 4 to 6.
Okay.
But each person in that 4 to 6 person group is going to control 4 to 6 people. So the idea is, since it's a funnel, those 12 to 16 to 20 people or whatever, they all go in, and 4 people come out, and that's your party. Like, they're the ones that get to level 1.
Yeah.
So it's a traditional D&D structure, but you have 4 times as many people, because each person is controlling 4 grave diggers and farmers and halfling vagrants and all other sort of horrific peasants that are just trying to get, like, that one thing that's going to change their life. It's so good. I love it.
It seemed like a lot of fun, and it's one that I don't know why for the last hour and a half I wasn't working on it, but we are getting ready to put out our first D&D podcast.
I'm excited to hear that.
I don't know what the legalities are. Are you legally allowed to say, like, you're doing a Dungeons and Dragons game?
If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, sure, like, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, because we said in the intro that we did, so the way we recorded it is literally set up a mic and recorded I think we played for like 4.5 hours, and I'm cutting that into what will probably end up being 4 episodes if I had to guess.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then we're like doing in post, we're doing intros, outros, and then I'm throwing in some bed music, throwing in some sound effects. That's largely how I do it as well, is I do the actual game recording, and then weeks later, that way if something comes up that I want to plug, or if there's like a specific thing, I can talk about it later. So let me ask you, is and this is just me being a little bit egotistical, is the Doctor Who one like the one you did the most effects on? Because it was, I can't think of another episode that you've done a lot of like sound effects for and stuff. And it made me smile. Like, you treated it like an episode of Doctor Who. Like, I left.
It's one of the two. There's 2 episodes that generally I don't do any special effects work or post-production stuff. I'd like to. That's something that I'd like to do down the road, is like revisit episodes and really do them up proper. But for the most part, it's a time-consuming thing, and it's something that, like, I don't think it necessarily needs. But for the Doctor Who episode, I wanted to take the extra step and like I figured if I was going to do an episode of Doctor Who, I wanted it to be an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, again, that was another episode, and not even necessarily the meat of it where I was actually playing. It was like the extra effects you did that just made me smile because like you did Doctor Who good by doing all that.
The one thing I couldn't forget, I couldn't crack it, and I was so furious at Netflix for taking down Doctor Who. Was I couldn't get the commercial break noise just right. Like I couldn't pinpoint it in the theme song.
Gotcha.
That was the one thing I wanted to do that I didn't get to do. Was I had pinpointed where the commercial breaks were going to be.
Okay.
And I couldn't get it to work.
That would have been stellar. And that episode is 18?
18, yeah.
18.
Yeah, it goes right before Our Radios Are Dying.
Yeah, so if you are a fan of Doctor Who or listen to this show on a regular basis, go listen to it, obviously. But I would listen to 19 first. Like, don't listen to mine first. 19 is the one that's like just an amazing one to listen to. I cannot praise that one enough.
I've heard that one recommended a lot in the last week. I think the other two, let's see, the three that I hear recommended a lot, and the three that I think are good entry points. 19 has been given a lot of praise in the last week. I made someone cry, which is a big win.
Wow, yeah, because and maybe it's because I looked at it as like a CW show where I smiled more at like and also had like a couple, like this is how good it was. Like I had a couple eye roll moments, like, oh God, are you kidding me? Like, and not in a bad way at all. Just like in for me, what the story was, the CW show is like you nailed it.
Like, yeah, so that one I've heard a lot of good stuff about, and I really love that episode. Like, Strix, my guest in that episode, is wonderful. She's a wonderful game designer and academic. She's great. That one I hear a lot of praise about. Episode 9, which is Mars Colony, is a great episode, I think. I really like that episode. So that's one.
Yeah, that one I liked. I remember that one. That was good.
And the other one that I hear recommended a lot. Well, there's one other one that I'll talk about briefly, but I hear Kingdom with Greg Gethard, the comedian. I hear recommended a lot, which is funny because that one is just the story of two terrible people ruining the lives of the people around them.
I'm trying to remember. I think that one was one that I was like actually working, so that was more background noise. So I'll have to. What episode number is that? I'll have to read.
That is 14.
14,
it's
yeah,
Kingdom with Greg Gethard. We play the employees of a cow barn in North Jersey.
Oh, no. That is one of my favorites, dude.
I love that episode.
Oh, okay. I don't know why. I guess I wasn't thinking when you said King. I was thinking fantasy, not when you just reminded me of it. Yes. That one, as soon as I heard what you guys were doing, I was like, I could have done Clerks.
You could have done Clerks. You really could have.
Like, that one, now that you remind me, that one may be my favorite, just because of the setting.
I love that episode. Those terrible fucking people.
That one was, yeah. Oh, God. Flip a coin, guys. 19 or 14. Flip a coin. They're the first ones you listen to.
A lot of people recommend Kingdom, and I get it because Greg is one of the funniest people that I've ever he was so good.
Is that a guy that you've known for a while or like?
No, actually, he was recommended. A friend of mine, guest of the show, Ian Vaffler, was after he was on the show, which Ian's great. You should also listen to that episode because that episode is super fun as well.
What's the episode number?
That one's episode 7, maybe?
Look at you. You're a good Wikipedia yourself.
7, I think. I've been doing some work where I've had to go back and look at what episode numbers of things were recently.
Okay.
So I have it on my mind, but I'm almost certain. Also, I just pulled up my website, so it's a little bit of cheating.
Fair enough.
I think it's 7. It's Paranoia. It's Paranoia with Ian Vaffler, a.k.a. Billy Kumahara.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
7. He's great. He's been great. He's been a friend of the show. Really from early on when I invited him on. He's been super enthusiastic about it. We've played games together since. He's awesome.
Oh, that's
he's
cool.
the coolest. And he was literally like at the very night that I recorded with him. Like he sent me a tweet and he was like, "Hey, Greg Gethard like has started playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like you should have him on your show." And Greg was immediately like, "Yes, let's do it as soon as possible."
That's cool.
And we started talking, and we were like, he was like, "This is the kind of story that I'm into, is the story of, like, people that go mad with the smallest amount of power." So I said, I can find you a game that will let you play that exact story. And I think I did pretty well.
Oh, it was great. You know what, it's the non-traditional, and cause I'm very novice, very green when it comes to tabletop gaming. Like I literally the 4-hour session I played, recently, and the Doctor Who that I played with you are like the two most recent things I've done. And probably, I haven't played more than 5 sessions, including those two. So like I've had 4 sessions in my life. So I'm very green to tabletop. And so for me, traditional is like the fantasy, D&D, dragons and whatnot kind of stuff. So the things that are that go away from that you do, is what I really like pay attention to and really like dig. And then even the ones that get even weirder, like episode 19, oh God, I'm so terrible at names. Our
radios are dying.
Our radios are dying. That is like the one, like that's more of an oddball one, like even more so than going away from the traditional, stuff. All great. Like I'm so glad that you do different things week in and week out.
I love it. I love doing different things every week. I love being able to feature so many different games. And if you like weird ones, we have some good ones coming up. I'm really excited. You and Jason Ashley, who was a guest of your podcast. I love Jason Ashley.
Episode number.
It's great. Episode number 3, Scarlet Heroes.
Oh, there you go.
He was the first person that I didn't know that I asked to be on the podcast, and he...
Oh, that's cool.
Like the same... I sent him an email not expecting any sort of response, and literally almost immediately he was like, "I am so excited to come on your show. Like, let's do it as soon as possible."
Yeah, he's he's a guy who I've been calling you guys the Super Friends because you guys have come back and to record your interviews. So he's another guy that I interviewed, and the first maybe 20 minutes is what was usable, and after that is Dunzo. So we've been trying to reconnect to interview to do the show again, and he is just a super nice guy
so
when it comes
nice.
to
He was so nice. He was I don't want to get emotional talking about how nice he was, but
and it's like so to the point where like, so we were supposed to record last night, him and I, and something happened, and like he let me know like maybe like half hour after we were supposed to record. I was sitting in the shedio here, and I was doing work on our D&D podcast that we're doing, and knowing that like I know everyone, like and I think this comes with like 10 years of podcasting, like I know things happen, so like whatever, like I know you're gonna eat, like I know Jason to the point now where like he's the type of guy that's gonna email me and say, "Oh shit, I either just forgot or something came up or whatever, and I didn't have time." So like he's like, and the first time he was on the show, like we missed a day as well, and like he's always super apologetic about it. I'm like, "Dude, don't worry," and he's super nice, and like it's nice. For me doing the podcast is, I'd say what this show has in common with yours is like the different guests week to week for the most part, and working within, like I tend to, a lot of the people I talk to tend to be doing podcasts or have done a podcast at one point. So like that's my community. Your community is the tabletop community. So like I don't know about you, but like I've been making friends.
Oh, so many. I've made so many wonderful. I've met the nicest people through this podcast, like doing the podcast, and like
like the Philadelphia Podcasting Society, which is where I'm sure I found out about your show.
They're great.
Yeah, like everyone's just so cool in there. Like there's this other Danny Drago. Him and I have talked a few times, and trying to do like hook up to do, I guess, like an interview on each other's shows. And like even I guess the founder
Nathan, yes.
Yes, Nathan. Like even like everyone's just so cool. Are you going to the meetup on Sunday?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna see. It's as a father, like that time frame is such a terrible time frame for me to go anywhere. So I'm gonna try to go, but I don't know.
What? Maybe. I'm gonna say maybe I'm gonna go because I just made plans for Sunday.
Yeah, it's like it's a Sunday from 1 to 5 or something.
I think I should be able to make that. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go, but for me, it's also like I don't know. You live in the city, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably a little bit closer than I am. Like I'm in the suburbs, so it's like, all right, am I going to commit the 45 minutes it's going to take to get down there, and then another 45 to get home, and then also spend some time down there?
I mean, it's at Tattooed Moms, so I think it's. I would say it's well worth the trip because Tattooed Moms is my favorite bar in the city.
Well,
Shout out to Tattooed Moms because they're great.
I phrased that wrong. Maybe not worth it. It's anytime.
No,
I
understand exactly. I understand
city,
exactly what you mean. I just wanted to plug the bar because I like that bar.
Yeah, well, that's where I think last year's Podcast Fest, like that
was one of their places. That was one of their sites. Yeah, they still have posters up for it. That's actually how I got exposed to a few of the podcasts. Yeah,
first year that the Podcast Fest was around, like I was super into the idea because literally like the year before I was talking to another podcast buddy of mine. I was like, why isn't there like a PodCon? Like there should totally be a PodCon around here. And so I was super into the idea. One of my buddies, Garrett Smith, who's a stand-up comedian down there in the city and does I Like to Movie, the podcast. He was at him and his podcast partner did their show at the first annual one, and I guess that turnout was, I think that's when they only had one location, so the turnout was like not great because people were just coming to randomly, I guess. So he said it was kind of beat, but like ever since then, like I've just heard nothing but praise for the Podcast Fest. Like I think they just did a lot of changes to make it like worth it in year 2, and I think last year was 3. So assuming they do it this year, it's 4. But yeah, I'm excited for. Like I'm waiting for them to give us news about when that's going to be because I want to take part in that big time. So anyway, way off track. So tabletop gaming, you're doing some wonderful things with your podcast. We left off in episode 10. I think our conversation left off with you getting into tabletop gaming through Middle Earth RPG.
Middle Earth role-playing game, 1996, I believe, something like that. It's very 90s. It's a very 90s game.
And I've since we recorded our first interview, I saw that you have gone back and looked at it again. Is this a game that you're going to try to do on Party of One?
I thought about it. It's tough though. Like I've really been. I looked at it. I looked at it for a long time, and it's maybe it's a solid. I'm not going to rule anything out.
I feel like that just based off what you mentioned about it. It seems like it could be one that would require more than like the hour and a half.
I think I feel like maybe, and I also feel like it's one where, like, reading through the rules and just rolling some dice through like some scenarios in my head, it feels like a game that's either going to run like 6 hours or 4 minutes.
That's a big
because it's literally one of those things where like I could roll 2 dice in a fight. Like I could go 1 round in a fight. Because one of the and I know this because one of the things I did to like help teach myself the game was I ran a few just simple like back and forth fights between some characters I had rolled up. Excuse me.
Okay.
I just was literally like, okay, this person goes here. I'm gonna roll these dice. At least one of them, I rolled the dice once, and the guy ended up like losing an arm and impaled on and it was literally like, well, he's dead. Okay. That was fast.
You mentioned something that I want to ask you about, and that's you're playtesting that game. So how much work do you put into like each episode? Excuse me, each episode of Party of One podcast, because you are literally playing a new game every week, so you are learning a new set of rules almost on a weekly basis.
Oh, I do. It's hard to say it's work when you're doing something you love, but that's an obnoxious cliche, and it's not true at all. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but I don't know. You'd be surprised at how short the time I spend actually learning the rules for games are, I think.
Because I don't know, and maybe it's because I just kind of, and obviously I don't play. I have only played it for 1 4-hour session really, but I just kind of like doing my character sheet is when I really learn, and I mean also listening to like Too Cool for Tabletop and listening to certain aspects of Party One podcast, like. I finally like kind of got like, okay, this is what a character sheet means, and this is how I build my character. So it took me 30 years to get to that point. So I feel like, and when we played the Doctor Who game, like I glanced at the rule sheet, and this was before I did my character for D&D. So I'm like, oh my god, like my brain's hurting, like looking at everything I have to do to build a character here. I can only imagine what it is on your side, having to like basically learn the whole game.
What it is I learn enough of it where I can, like, pick up the, like... I'd say I generally, the way it works is when I know what game I am playing... Sorry, my cat's doing something and it's very distracting. So, the way it works is when I first decide, like, when I'm first emailing a guest, I'll tell them, like I told you, I say, like, you get final say. I say, like, I can suggest a game if you want, but that is way less fun to me than you coming to me and saying, I want to play a game about X. And either me saying, like, I can make that happen, or you saying, I want to play game X, like, specific game X, and me saying, great. Like, I find that way more interesting because like I always say, it's your episode, I'm just hosting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like I've had some guests be like, I just want to play. I've had some guests just be like, I like fantasy. Let me play a fantasy game. I've had some guests be like, or like, I like sci-fi. Do we have something sci-fi themed? And I've had Greg who was like, I want to play a story about somebody who goes mad with a small amount of power. I want to play something mundane, but I want to go mad with power. And I had one guest who literally told me, I want to play a game set in the modern era. I want to play... Actually, no, he specifically, I want to play Feng Shui 2. And we played it... It was episode 5. Chris Burlew, great guy. He said, I want to play Feng Shui 2. I want to play it in the modern day. I want to play an ordinary guy who discovers that he has superpowers and goes from a zero to a hero over the course of the episode. And I said,
that was another good one.
I can do that. So I literally will roll with whatever people like say to me.
So do you do you just read the rule book, or do you play test these games?
Generally,
like,
I will read the rule. Like for most games, I generally like a lot of the games that we end up playing for the show are games that I know already, because one of the reasons that I started the show was because I was buying a bunch of tabletop games and I wasn't playing them, but I was reading them because I had a problem. But now,
that sounds like my comic book addiction. I used to go to a comic book store and just buy hundreds of dollars
but now
of
I have a
comic books every week.
podcast. You see how I changed that word? So like the way
Yes.
to work is we'll email, I'll pick the game. Generally, it's a game that I own already, so I've had a chance to read it over. If it's not, I will like read it to the point. Like I'll just read it, to see if I can get a good understanding of the rules. If I need to like run a thing for myself, I'll run a thing for myself. If I need to, what I do a lot is I write up like I write up 2-page, very specifically 2-page, one sheet, one side back, or front and back, one sheet, like rules breakdown page, like guides or action guides. So like I challenge myself to like read the rules and understand it well enough that I can translate the stuff that I need to know onto 2 pages, so that I can print it out onto one sheet of paper, and like that, and then that sheet of paper is what I will reference. I do that a lot.
Okay, yeah.
So it's stuff like that, where like I try to teach myself the rules, maybe not exactly, and I maybe don't learn every nuance of them, but to the story that I want to tell and the game that I want to play, I will teach myself those rules.
All right, we do have to take a quick break. There were some issues with the audio that I had to cut here so that I could fix it on the other end. But for the remainder of this episode, there will be no more commercial breaks. We'll have a lot of edits, but I don't think you're going to see them. I don't think you're going to hear them. You're not going to see them. I can guarantee that. I just wanted to take a quick moment to make sure and remind you guys that you should check out Jeff's podcast, Party of One Pod, on SoundCloud. Start off with episode 19, Our Radio is Dying. That is still one of my favorite episodes that he has put out. Followed by that, actually, episode 14, Kingdom. That's another really great one. And then follow that up, the trifecta, episode 18, the Doctor Who episode that I was on. Fantastic episode. While you're doing all of that, make sure you check out on iTunes, subscribe to his podcast, rate, review, 5 stars. And while you're on iTunes doing that, you might as well head on over to Everything Is Awesome's iTunes page and subscribe there, 5-star review. All that does is helps us. iTunes has iTunes Math, and it helps make magic, basically. And it puts more eyes on the show. More eyes on the show means we can do cooler things. I have a huge announcement coming up for Everything Is Awesome, and it's because people are giving it buzz and people are sharing it. As Jeff says at the end of his podcast, sharing this podcast is the best thing you can do, whether that's through social media, through telling a friend, through leaving a review on iTunes, and a rating on iTunes, whatever it may be. That helps this so much. And I'll tell you what, the past few weeks, you guys have been great. You've been spreading the word. We getting more and more eyes on this show, and it's great. We have a huge announcement coming up. Hopefully, I can make it in the next episode or the episode after that. I can't wait to share it with you guys. Big things are coming. We also have a couple bonus episodes coming out for you. You'll see on June 3rd a bonus episode. You'll also see June 10th a bonus episode, all while we're doing all the normal episodes on Wednesdays as well. So, big things are happening for Everything Is Awesome. I love it. Thank you guys so much. I've babbled on way too much. It's late. I'm tired. On to the show. Here we are, returning with Jeff Stormer from Party of One podcast. What has been for Party of One Pod the most complicated game you have had to learn and facilitate?
That was. Let me look through the episode list and really think about it. I think I already know. Like, looking through it. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure I know exactly what it was. It was definitely episode 4, which was Promethean the Created, which is a White Wolf World of Darkness game, which is a very popular brand of video games, RPGs.
Okay.
White Wolf is sort of the other granddaddy along with D&D.
Gotcha.
They make like Vampire the Masquerade and stuff.
Okay.
That was probably the hardest game to learn, because there's a lot of little things, and I'm going to lay down a hot take here. They're not great at indexes, which when you have 2 500-page books that you're looking at is a nightmare.
I'm sure.
Like, they don't list out enough things in their index, so it makes it difficult to like go back and learn things. It makes it It makes it difficult to go back and reference things, because you have to like try to memorize what page things are on.
See that? I think that's what would drive me crazy as a GM.
It's not fun. That's one of the reasons why I try to like minimize the amount of like reference that I have to do for the show is like I don't like referencing things because I know that it's not
Yeah.
audio I'm going to use. I'm not going to use the audio of me flipping through a PDF trying to find information. It's not fun for me because I'm stalling out a game and I'm like, crap, I got to find a thing. And it's extra work. Like, I could be just doing stupid improv.
Yeah, that's all. So going back to the D&D podcast, and honestly, like me, so we had the idea to do the D&D podcast years ago, like before, like probably right when like one person did it, like right before it got popular to do D&D or tabletop RPG as a podcast. We're like, we should do this. Like, this would be a fun idea to do. And of course, we wait 3 years later, and it's the most popular thing. And honestly, it was listening to you, listening to Jason, because you guys are the first tabletop RPG podcast that I've listened to. In fact, the only two that I listened to. And I'm like, listen, all right, they're doing it. Like, there's definitely an audience now. Like, if we're gonna do it, this is the time to do it. We're playing anyway. So we where was I going with this? Fucking, we do it. I don't know. Fucking, it's great. I love doing it. Is what I'm trying. Like, it's oh, okay, yeah. The improv aspect of it. That's where I wanted to go. Is I play this stupid character that was introduced like into the campaign, established campaign already. Who is without giving too much away, he's like, I do a very terrible French accent.
All right, I can get down with that.
Yeah, and so I don't know. When you play full campaigns or full sessions with multiple people, I don't know how you feel as a GM. But like, I made it my mission to make sure we didn't do too much in the episode, like except for role play. Like, all I wanted us to do was role play. I was like, so like, I knew what the mission was. I knew what they needed to do, and I decided to make it my mission to make sure we don't do that. So literally, like, we ate breakfast the entire time. Like, we and this isn't really spoiling anything. The episode title is "Everybody Gets a Crepe," and we literally have breakfast twice. And talk the entire first hour of the game.
I'm a sucker for that though. Like, I literally just want to play a character and talk about things. It's one of the reasons I really love our like games like Our Radios Are Dying, like freeform games. I like just playing a character. Like, I could just literally just chat in character forever.
Yeah, like that is and that's what, when I started talking to our GM and discussing like what my role was going to be, and it was really just like, I'm this talky guy, and I'm like, this is what sold me. Like, if you told me I could get the art, like, role play and do improv, like, improv is something that I'm starting to get into. Like, I'm like, all right, like, I want, obviously that's what RPG is, like, that's you're improving to the point like where now I'm gonna probably take a class at the Philly Improv Theater this summer. Because it just sounds like such a fun thing to do, and like on stage. And it will help me be a better tabletop player, I guess. But so yeah, I love the improv aspect. I love the talky aspect of it, just like you. I'm glad, because I've read a lot about GMs just hating. Like, come on, just get to the action.
No, I love it. I like it's because it's storytelling. I like telling a story.
Yeah, and that's what. So, the one theme that got lost with all these interviews that I did was we every single guest somehow just naturally, it wasn't forced. Like, we all talked about storytelling being probably the most important element of anything. Like, whether it be a book, whether it be a tabletop RPG, a television show, a movie, whatever. Like, you can have acting that's not top notch. Like, you don't have the greatest acting, you don't have the greatest writing necessarily, you don't have the greatest quality, but as long as the story is good from point A to from start to finish, then you got me. Like, for instance, like The Walking Dead has its moments of not having great acting or great dialogue, but for me, I think The Walking Dead is one of the greatest stories out there.
I'm sorry, I got distracted by a cat again. I haven't actually. I read the first. She's like sniffing me, and I don't know
I
why.
love, I love that you easily because like as I was talking, I'm like he's not paying attention or he's distracted. It's that cat.
No, I listened to hear it and I heard every word that you said. It's just she's like sniffing. I don't know what I smell like is the thing. Anyway,
That's
I read the
funny.
first vault. I've read the first. I guess it's like the first two or three trades of The Walking Dead, the comic. I've never actually
Yeah.
watched the show, but
Oh
like
wow.
we don't have
Oh
like
okay.
cable.
You and I may have discussed
No,
this
I don't.
before.
I actually don't think we have. Yeah, I haven't
Oh
watched
okay.
any of The Walking Dead, but I read the first like three trades or something.
Well, the comics are, I think. I mean, now I'm also probably 6 months, maybe even a year behind at this point. Um, and it's because I have, like I said earlier, I have this issue. If I walk into a comic book store, I'll spend almost $100.
That sounds about right.
And I just I have a problem. So, as much as I hate digital anything for reading, I only buy my comics digital now because I can have self control. And after 3 months or so, they drop from $4 an issue to like $2 an
hmm
issue. So I'm a couple months behind on it, but yeah, the last wherever I'm read up to, like it is still a stellar story. I mean, it has its up and downs, just like
Sure.
any comic book does. But yeah, the show is if you have Netflix, it's something that I think you should start watching, my friend. It's
Um,
really good.
I think I'm gonna jump into it sooner or later. I don't think it's not something that I like maliciously didn't watch. It's just something that like I kind of like I missed the boat on, and it's been a struggle to like be the guy that's like, hey, I just
Yeah,
watched Walking Dead season one.
you know,
You guys want to talk?
that's Game of Thrones for me. I
That's well, I mean, that's also Game of Thrones for
Okay,
me.
yeah, because literally everyone I know watches Game of Thrones except for you now, and my everyone's like, you gotta start watching it, and I've sat down and watched the first episode, or at least tried to, and I fell asleep, and I don't know if that's because I tend to stay up, like my eyes are droopy right now because I stay up till 3 a.m. every night, and I just torture myself with lack of sleep. So if I sit down and watch a show at 11 o'clock at night, I tend to fall asleep unless it's like The Flash or something like that really holds my attention. And Game of Thrones is one of those shows where like I've sat down twice to watch that pilot episode, and I mean I've been told you have to get past the first three and then it really picks up. But yeah, Game of Thrones is just that I'm just so far behind. I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah. I just because and it's tough because like once you're not part of like the
Mhm.
conversation, it's tough to I find that, like a lot of shows like that, it's tough to like make that plunge.
Yeah,
It's like there's an very old, like super old Jim Gaffigan routine where he talks about this, where he's like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, I just saw Heat, and that's exactly how I feel about like The Walking Dead. I don't want to go into lunch one day at work and be like, you guys want to talk about like this Rick guy? I like
Rick
him.
Grimes is great. Look,
He seems like a good dude, and everybody else is like, are you just on season one?
you know what though? That's like their pilot is one of the strongest pilots I've ever watched.
I've heard
Um,
that. I've heard that.
and I mean season finale is weak in my opinion for season one, but ever since then I think I mean it's, again just like the comic book, it has its dips, but
hmm
generally going back to the storytelling thing, like from episode one of a season to last episode of a season, whatever that is, generally the entire season arc is good enough for me to say, all right, you guys did your job, you entertained me, and I'm happy with what you're doing with a product that I love.
hmm
um and it's weird because fantasy, so like as much as I like D&D now and like kind of like, and I even write, like my buddy who's running the D&D campaign, he writes for a book series that he created, and I write for it as well, and it's like fantasy based obviously. I actually like, I don't, another reason I'm not into Game of Thrones, I don't really like fantasy, like watching it.
That's understandable. I think it's I can understand that. I can kind of take or leave it.
Like it's
It really, and it goes back to what we were saying about storytelling. For me, it really like I kind of feel like it's not enough to be like, hey, look, a dragon, because I've been playing D&D since I was 8. Like I've heard some cool stories about dragons.
well, and for me, it's like okay, like I can, and I've watched the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I haven't watched. Maybe did I watch any Hobbit? I don't think I've watched any of the Hobbit trilogy.
I'm not giving it a shot. I'm not. That's a movie that I made a pretty firm commitment to. Just that's not for me.
I
And that's a shame because The Hobbit's maybe my favorite book,
it's
like ever. One of my favorite books ever.
It's and Lord of the Rings. I'm glad it was made. I'm glad that I saw it. But all that is for me now, and I maybe I finally got rid of the movies. But all that is for me is a moment in time. Like I can't, and it's me going back to a Kevin Smith joke. But like I can't sit there and watch 3 movies about walking. Like it's, and I know there's more to it than that. But like at the end of the day, like I'm like, oh my god, like fucking.
No, I don't think I've ever gone back and like rewatched the Lord of the Rings movies.
I've watched them exactly twice. Once in the theater each, and once when I bought them on DVD. And then I mean, and there's a lot of DVDs that I do that with that I've never gone. I probably have a couple that I haven't gone back to and watched a third time. But I look at them. I'm like, I'm gonna one day I will for sure. But Lord of the Rings, I was like, nah. I know the story. Like it's not. Like for me, I'd rather like superhero movies is my thing. Like I grew up as a superhero kid, so like that is where those fantasy stories grab my attention. So like I'll rewatch Iron Man over and over again if whether it's I catch it on TV or I pop it in. Same thing with like Avengers, like any of the Marvel stuff obviously is pretty much golden now, and like the classic DC stuff like 89 Batman and any of that stuff that's my Lord of the Rings. Like if I and my Game of Thrones and stuff like have you watched Daredevil?
Season 1, yes. Season 2, no.
Oh my god! So Daredevil season 1 and Daredevil as a whole as of now is I think the best thing Marvel has ever put out, like whether it be movie or TV. Like it is such good storytelling.
See, that's how I feel about Ant-Man.
Oh, see, no, I haven't seen Ant-Man.
I think Ant-Man is the best thing that they've done.
I have not seen Ant-Man, and not for any other reason, but like it was one of those movies that like, all right, well, I have 2 kids, but can I get out to go see it? No, all right. So it's just, and I just have to pick it up on Blu-ray and I'll watch it. So I've heard good. I think Ant-Man is one. I like Paul Rudd. I love Paul Rudd. So that looks like it could be a great movie.
That's my favorite of the Marvel movies.
But I'll tell you what. Once you sit down and watch season 2 of Daredevil, I don't know how. Maybe you won't change your mind but it is also very good. It is not as strong as season 1, but I mean the way they treat the Punisher is just. It's just John Bernthal is the definitive Punisher, and I love Thomas Jane as the Punisher. So he kind of had a lot to like work up to, I guess, for me at least. And so good. And I think now do you go and see the Marvel movies often?
Generally, as soon as they come out in theaters, I'll go see them.
So Civil War is going to probably be the first Marvel movie since probably Age of Ultron, and before that, the first Avengers, that I'll go and seek out in the theater, because it is that's the comic book storyline from probably about 10 years ago at this point, maybe give or take a year or two, that brought me back into comics, because I love comics just like probably a lot of people are in our age group did, because we were too cool for it at a certain point. So I came back to it in my early 20s, and it was the Civil War storyline that brought me back. And like to the point where like that storyline made me like Captain America, to the point where I have his shield tattooed on my body now. And so that means a lot to me, that storyline. And I'm just excited for it. Like everything I've heard.
The reviews are really good. I'm looking forward to it. Did you see Batman versus Superman? I did not. Okay. I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, and you know what? That movie had to go out of its way for me to not see it, because I love Batman. I love Ben Affleck.
I'm literally wearing a Superman shirt right now.
I have a Batman mask somewhere floating around the house. I have no less than 5 Batman shirts. So like I think we did get into this a little bit last time you were on. Like for you it's Superman, for me it's Batman. And you had to legitimately screw something up in your marketing
Yeah,
to make me say I'm not going to go see this movie.
they had. Yeah,
And so did you see Man of Steel?
I did, not in theaters. Again, I was very proud of myself. Like once the reviews came in and once I got spoiled on the ending, like I was out.
So what is your thoughts after seeing Man of Steel? Like how do you feel as a Superman fan and then objectively?
I think both. This is that it was a terrible film. Like it's first off just as a movie fan, it's a bad movie. Like
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
just not a good film. Like the characters' motivations don't make sense. Not like nothing makes sense in the movie.
My biggest issue, and maybe you'll school me on this because you're more of the Superman fan than I am, but my biggest issue with that movie is that it's not a Superman movie. Like he's not Superman. Like
He's at no point is he Superman in that movie. Well,
Like-
there's so like and now we're gonna get into the meat of the matter because now I'm gonna talk about it as a fan of Superman and
Okay.
like what that character means to me and
Okay.
like
Go for it.
Superman he's a lot of things. He is the ultimate like immigrant story
Mhm.
in that he is somebody who came from another place and was raised and was instilled with like these essentially American values and became like a part of our society and elevated our society as a part of that. Like he's very consciously created by the sons of Jewish immigrants to be an immigrant story. He's also fundamentally like he's also fundamentally like yeah, it's fun like it's so important for Superman as a character to be instilled with these values and
Yes.
like I'm perfectly comfortable with the character of Jonathan Kent not being perfect. I get what they're going for. And I like that. I like changing. I don't think he needs to be a perfect person.
Mhm.
But by having him literally say, "Hey, maybe you should just let that busload of children die."
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
That bothered me so much. I'm like, come on, like this is how he learns to be. This is why that Superman breaks Zod's neck. Like he's oh God, so many
Well,
issues with that.
It's
movie.
funny because since watching that movie, I've read at least one really good argument for why him snapping Zod's neck isn't the worst thing in the world. To the point where I'm not even necessarily bothered that he does it. I'm just bothered that the movie takes the laziest path to get there.
Okay.
Because there was a really great argument somewhere. It might have. I don't remember exactly where it was.
You know what? I think something's sparking in my mind about maybe I read something similar and saying, okay.
But
So yeah.
there's a great argument that's like Superman doesn't necessarily need to have a no kill rule like in the same way that like Batman does, because Superman doesn't need to go to that line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually okay with somebody like pointing out like, well, why should Superman like there was an interesting thing of like, if Superman were at that point, I don't think he would have the same qualms about like killing and changing his ethos like that in the same way that like if Batman does it, then I can understand Batman being like, well, now I'm the Joker. Like
Okay.
now I'm the bad guy. If Batman crosses that line because now he's fundamentally done the thing that turned him into Batman by taking somebody's life.
Okay. Yeah.
If Superman, because he has no fear, because he has infinite power, and like without being corrupted, it would make sense for him to be able to be the one to say like, in a no-win situation, well, I have to do this. And I wasn't super bothered. Like that kind of contextualized the idea of Superman having to kill someone. The problem is, Superman could have just like flown. He could have just like flown up. He could have just like, I don't know, turned like 90 degrees.
Yeah,
They could have just punched him in the head and knocked him out.
it. Yeah, I had a buddy who said like, man, you need everything to be to how the comic book is. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm okay with things taking liberties. Like, I mean, every property that gets turned into anything other than a comic book, and even now, like, comic book takes properties from its own past. Like, it's fine. Like, I get it. You have to make it translate. But I mean, I was like, there's certain things you can't do to Superman. And
I think if you tell the story, like I've read comic books where Superman is killed, and I've appreciated them, and I think that it can be done well.
Yeah.
I think that Man of Steel didn't do it well, and because of that, I'm not gonna give them another 3 hours of my life to try and tell the story just as bad again.
Yeah, you know what? The one thing that I think that comes out of Batman versus Superman is that we get more Batman movies because from what I've heard, Batfleck, great.
I've heard the same thing about Wonder Woman. I've heard that was really good, and I'm all about.
Oh, and her solo flick, I'm like, here's what I loved about Captain America is that it was a period piece. So they're doing that with Wonder Woman. I think it's going to be a wonderful film.
I'm really excited. I'm excited to see how it looks. I'm not going to preemptively say I'm going to go see it because I don't think they've earned that kind of goodwill with me.
They will. You're right. The only movie that they will get that from me is the next Batman movie. Like, I will. Batman is one of the few that I will always go see, but their track record with Batman is relatively good, save for the Schumacher years. So they have goodwill with Batman.
I think the only property that if they were to say we're making this movie that I would preempt at least from DC Comics making movies, like their movie department. The only movie that they could get me to preemptively say like I'm there is if they were to just come out and be like, by the way, guys, this Justice League movie we're doing.
All right, you didn't think I was going to let you go without a cliffhanger, did you? No. We are splitting this conversation up into 2 bits. Part 1 is airing now. You just listened to it. It's been great. Part 2 will be on next week, and it will be on time next week. The holiday screwed everything up this week. What I want you to do is, before you do anything, after you're done listening to this episode, I want you to go check out Jeff on Twitter at PartyOfOnePod. You can find him on SoundCloud.com/PartyOfOnePodcast. You can also find him on Facebook.com/PartyOfOnePodcast. And we have already dropped a couple episodes that you should listen to. Another really good one that he just recently released was episode 21, Murderous Ghosts, with Chris from that D&D podcast. That was a really good episode too. He's been doing some interesting things in his last episode or so. He's also flipped it where he has not been the GM, he's been the player, and that's a really cool thing to hear, is him play instead of be the game master. So great podcast. Check out Jeff Stormer. Had a lot of fun. Next week we're going to get more into about superheroes. We get into about Once Upon a Time. It's going to be a fun episode again next week, where we continue our conversation with the one, the only, creator of worlds, storyteller extraordinaire, Jeff Stormer. Thank you, Jeff, for being a super friend. We're already starting to schedule my next appearance on his podcast, where I return as the Doctor, if you will. So that's exciting. I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to finish the conversation with Jeff next week. For Everything Is Awesome, I'm Kevin. You can find me on Twitter at HHWST. You can find this show on Twitter at Real Awesome Pod. You are also on Instagram at Awesome Podcast. We're going to be doing some neat things. We also have a brand new website, awesomepodcast.com. Check all that out. And as I said, for Everything Is Awesome, I'm your host, Kev, and you're listening to Everything Is Awesome right here only on awesomepodcast.com. Everything is Awesome is produced by Crude Humor Studios. For more information about the podcast, please visit us online at awesomepodcast.com. Or if you're interested in advertising on the show, please email us at advertising@crudehumorstudios.com. Stream and download all episodes on iTunes. While you're there, please consider leaving a 5-star review. If you're a fan of the show, please let us know by following us on Twitter and Instagram @ThatEntertains.